Got a little microphone set up here. I hope that's not too annoying for you. Anyway, today we're going to be talking about souvenirs. The things that are made in China that you buy in France to show your friends in California.
I think you should go home now, Devin.
The things you get overseas, and no, herpes do not count. So, what actually is a souvenir? A souvenir can most broadly be defined as being a sacred physical talisman that symbolizes one's travel experiences and acts as a reminder and reference of that time. I just blacked out giving that description.
What happened? I blacked out.
When you think of it, the word souvenir typically conjures up images of those French keychains, a boomerang, or, if you're English, an entire culture's heritage. And you're not wrong. Souvenirs can be defined in many ways, but because this is my video, and I am in charge, until YouTube decides that I'm not, I get to create my own arbitrary definition to help get me my point across, and in doing so, losing a huge chunk of this video's validity. So, for the purpose of this video, I see souvenirs as objects that can be purchased, that are deliberately marketed towards tourists to act as a reminder of the place that they went to. Which is why I wouldn't define that weird rash you got in Bali as a souvenir. I know, that's like the second STD joke I've made. I'm not projecting. For this video, souvenirs have to adhere to the above definition. They have to be marketed as a reminder. Mementos, for the purpose of this video, will refer to a physical object that acts as a reminder of that time and place without that marketing and purchasing element. Here's an example, right? I steal a rock from Jerusalem, ironic, as a personal physical memento, but I did not buy it, nor was it marketed to me. Therefore, it is not a souvenir. Now let's flip that definition to make it suit a souvenir. Let's say I bought that rock from Jerusalem and it was sold and marketed to me as being a reminder of the location and my visit. It is therefore, for the purpose of this video, a souvenir. One involves an individual's journey with the object, and the other involves the same journey as well as this massive marketing behemoth that is the tourism industry. One is like a fun, casual, one-on-one relationship, and the other is the same relationship, except there's like a annoying third wheel who keeps trying to sell you Herbalife products. Souvenirs can come in a whole bunch of physical forms, and only evolved into what we know them as today following an increase in tourism that became possible during and after the Industrial Revolution, when the middle class grew and travel became more affordable. People have been collecting more authentic mementos since the dawn of time.
All agreed upon the procedure.
Well, yes, it's quite simple, really. Look, all you've got to do is sign here, here, and here. You got that, honky?
I say collecting because the reality is these people were stealing. Think the Romans with Egyptian gold, or the Greeks with Persian silks, or Goldman Sachs with the entire American fucking economy. I'm so brave. I also put authentic in italics because what is considered authentic is really in the eye of the beholder. More on this later. Some pretty hilarious examples of people taking physical mementos can be seen in early pilgrims taking sand from Jerusalem. These pilgrims were after the sand that had supposedly touched the Messiah's feet, which is probably the earliest form of foot fetish I've ever heard of.
Then Mary took a whole pint of a very expensive perfume.
So much of the sand was actually being taken that the caretakers were forced to haul in fresh dirt every few weeks. Another example is people carving off pieces of wood from Shakespeare's seat. You know who did that? Thomas Jefferson. Us Americans have a proud tradition of ripping off British heritage. These are things that are not strictly souvenirs though, as they don't really fall under that bracket of for-profit objects having been marketed to individuals, and there are really not too many examples of souvenirs being around back in that day. There are accounts of painted vases being sold at sites of interest during antiquity, but I don't really know how effective the marketing strategy would have been back then. For every vase that you buy, you get one monkey. Fast forward to the Industrial Revolution. You remember that, Grandma? The middle class had grown, and so had people's accessibility to travel. All of a sudden, going over to Egypt or the Middle East wasn't just for oil. It was also for luxury. Due to the introduction of rail lines throughout Europe, quick and easy access points, otherwise previously out of reach, also became available. Pioneers such as Thomas Cook had started creating travel groups where people would pay for trips to go somewhere like England. He did that with posters like this or this. Yeah, he convinced people to part with their money with that poster, and I can't even get people to click on my thumbnails. Following that, a real industry started to sprout up around traveling to these destinations. Hotels, activities, and yep, you guessed it, souvenirs. The middle class really didn't have the money required to buy authentic representations of the cultures they were traveling to, so they were relegated to buying imitations of those things. And that's really where we see the birth of the souvenir industry that we see today. Now, there's that word again, authentic. What does that actually mean? The dictionary definition defines it as of undisputed origin and not a copy and genuine. The reality is, the world of mass-produced souvenirs do not meet the above definition for a multitude of reasons. The first being that they're not even made in the country you are purchasing them from. That French Eiffel Tower keychain was made by workers in China who were probably keychained to their desk, minus the key. The other reasons they do not adhere to that definition is because they're not genuine. They do not represent the culture they're supposedly trying to remind you of. In fact, they're actually subtly reinforcing a fake marketed representation of that culture. Yeah, what the fuck does that actually even mean? Basically, when you hear about France, you are told to expect croissants, mimes, the Eiffel Tower, and romance, when in reality, real French culture is much deeper. It's about losing wars and complaining. So complaining about the French is actually the most culturally respectful thing you can do. Those souvenirs are designed, whether you know it or not, to reinforce that artificial narrative that you have been sold. And I can prove it. Remember at the beginning of this video when I was looking all like fucking cute and shit? You remember, right? And I wanted to make a distinction between mementos and souvenirs. This is why. If you really wanted just a memory of the actual place you visited, which is what people typically claim when they buy souvenirs, why not just find something that you don't have to buy, like a flower from Spain, or a thumbtack from England, or a bullet wound from the States? You don't do this because you've been convinced by the marketing industry and the tourism industry that the true representation of a culture is what they have sold to you. This is why I think people talk so much trash about traveling via a cruise ship. The travel experience has been so artificially curated that the reality is you're never going to truly experience the culture of the country you are traveling to.
You just need to let go. Don't keep it all inside. Sometimes you just have to let the whole world know.
You are actually experiencing what the cruise ships are telling you is the culture of that country, which comes with a whole bunch of capitalistic falsehoods. But who cares? The marketing behemoth that is the tourism industry is not here to educate you. It's here to make money. Souvenirs are actually so popular that there is even a trade show specifically for them in Las Vegas. I mean, I knew hookers and chains was fun, but like hookers in keychains? Am I right? I think the clearest form of souvenirs entering the mainstream was when these fucking spoons were invented. Yeah, you remember these from your grandparents? Turns out, property wasn't the only thing they were collecting. These spoons were invented in the 19th century to reflect the location that one had traveled to and acted as an early form of mass commercial souvenirs. I've looked up an article about these things, and they gave a list of the top things to do with these spoons. Among that list was turn them into a wall hanging, make jewelry out of them, or gift them to someone else. I can promise you, if you gifted me this, I would turn myself into a wall hanging. Following this, the souvenir industry grew rapidly, as did travel. Up until COVID, the souvenir industry as a whole was seeing up to $10 billion in revenue a year. So, the problem with souvenirs, right? There's got to be some sort of angle or point. In many cases, these souvenirs are not real representations of the culture they seek to monetize. A classic example of this is the misprint of the words Platinum Jubilee on a bunch of crockery intended to be sold to coincide with the Queen's Platinum Jubilee. I know using English royalty as a quasi explanation of cultural misrepresentation is probably not the best form, but it's one of the clearest that I could find. Obviously, this is one of the most glaring forms, but you can see it in more traditional forms of indigenous art where the art itself doesn't at all reflect the real society it claims to represent. Think American Indian headdresses, for example, where groups will sell false representations of what those headdresses signify. And to be clear, I'm not going to say how one group of people decides to commodify its own culture is right or wrong. We all got to survive. But I do think there is a real chance of culture being whitewashed in an attempt to make it more palatable to the consumer market. And that leads into a whole other conversation around loss of connection to one's heritage and ancestry that, honestly, not going to get into, as I'm probably not the best person to speak on it, and I really don't know what it is like to have your culture commodified in the form of a souvenir, because I don't even know what my culture as a whitey looks like. I don't know, like souvenir moonshine. Anyway, hope you enjoyed the video, guys. If you liked it, smash that like button and don't forget to subscribe. I don't know, support the channel. Thanks, guys.